Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Nicole Vignola, who's here to share with us her new book, Rewire, Break the Cycle, Alter Your Thoughts, and Create Lasting Change. So do you have a habit of thinking that you're just not good enough? Well, today's guest is going to share with us how to overcome just that. So Nicole Vignola is a neuroscientist, author, speaker, and corporate consultant. With a BSc in neuroscience and an MSc in organizational psychology, Nicole works with companies and individuals worldwide, educating them on the science of human optimization, health, and longevity, and how to enable employees to better perform in their daily lives and in turn, bring peak performance to the workplace. So welcome to the show, Nicole Vignola.
Thank you so much for having me.
My goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. So what inspired you to write this?
I worked with a few people and I've heard a lot of people saying things like, I'm wired this way, this is how I am, or they don't sort of think about the fact that they have the possibility to change. Now, after studying neuroscience, I learned that the brain can change well into old age. So neuroplasticity, the ability for us to reshape and restructure the pathways in our brain, happens into old age as well. So if there's any habits or behaviors that are holding you back, we can absolutely change them no matter how old we are, which is wonderful.
So that kind of saying you can't teach an old dog new tricks really isn't fitting anymore.
Exactly. You absolutely can. So I wrote Rewire because I really wanted to empower people with the knowledge and understanding of what is happening down to the neurobiology of your brain so that you can really get a grip of what's happening and then, change the course of your beliefs, the inner narrative that sort of drives your life. That little voice that says, I'm not good enough. And it's kind of part of the background. You don't even know it's there anymore, but it still dictates where you're going to go and what you're going to do.
It seems that so many of us have this negative track that we're playing constantly in our head. Is there some type of a bias that our brain is choosing, or is this just how we're wired?
Yes, so we have two biases. We have a negativity bias, which is our tendency to dwell on the negative. So if you receive 10 wonderful compliments, but one negative one, you are more likely to go to bed worrying about that one negative one, despite the 10 amazing ones that counter what that negative one said. And that's because we are somewhat wired for survival. Down to evolutionary reasons, we needed to make sure that we were aware of the negative things in our environment to survive. But now that we have developed a frontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that is a little bit more newly developed, it's actually part of the neocortex, neo meaning new, we are sort of catching up, if you will, with evolution. And I believe that, in generations to come, we will have less of this negativity bias. Now, the negativity bias means that you can sometimes, if things start going bad, you can start focusing on that and then think you've had a rubbish day, for example. Or you tend to dwell on the negative aspects about yourself. So maybe you don't like your nose and you fixate on that, but you actually have amazing other features. And that's how the negativity bias works. Now, the issue with that is that we also have a confirmation bias. So if you say things to yourself like, I'm not good enough, the brain is going to try and find evidence and proof as to why that statement is true. It's not very well sort of suited for us to constantly contradict ourselves. So if we have a belief, our brain will try and find patterns and evidence that will reinforce that belief. And so it can become a downward spiral or, a snowball effect of constantly focusing on the negative and then constantly kind of highlighting that negative aspect of our lives.
And so by the same principle, then if we focus on the positive, then does more positive come into our lives?
Exactly. So, the upward spiral is that when we start focusing on the positives or even the neutrals of our day, I always play this game with my friends and family, what is the small win and the big win of your week? And it's funny because a lot of people will start by saying, oh, well, not that much. And then they'll be talking. I'll say, oh, that's a small win. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then by the end of the conversation, they're sort of going, oh, wow, actually, I had a really amazing week. Now, When we do that, we release feel good chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin, which then make us feel good. And then when we feel good, we actually seem to pay more attention to the positives. And so even that is a self sort of fulfilling prophecy in a positive way. So it's a positive feedback loop.
So, is there a way, a practical way, kind of piggybacking on what you're just talking about, that we can use different strategies to kind of
Mhm.
counteract the brain's negative bias and develop a more positive outlook throughout the day?
Yes. So I'll give you two different ways to do this. So, one way to do it is when you're in the moment. So, let's say you experience something negative, something that maybe sends you off on a trajectory. Maybe you get cut off in traffic. One way that you can regulate your central nervous system back to a state of calm is through something called the physiological sigh. Now, have you ever been stressed and you start sort of huffing and puffing? And that's actually a good thing. A lot of people think that that's a bad thing. You hear someone saying, "Oh, well, what's wrong with you?" It's actually your brain trying to reset your breathing mechanism back to a state of calm. So, sighing is really good. So, that happens naturally. But we can fast track that breathing by actually performing the physiological sigh, which goes something like this. So it's an inhale through the nose, another inhale. So you take like an extra sip at the top, pause at the top for a second, and then a long exhale through the mouth. So I'll do two so that you can hear me. So it's inhale through the nose, another one, pause, and then long exhale. And if you try that, I don't know if you were following me, but you will feel that your body feels really relaxed and really calm. And that is essentially signaling to your brain that there's no threat involved. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing we need to run or fight from. We can just relax. And then you can shift your perspective to something that is more neutral. I wouldn't say positive, but I would reframe to something that's more realistic. So let's say you got cut off. Instead of saying, "Oh, well, actually, I'm so happy that they did that," that's not very conducive. It's actually quite sort of, quote unquote, toxic to do that. But what's better, a better solution is to think, okay, well, actually, maybe they were in a hurry. Reframe it with something more neutral, something more realistic. So that's kind of something you can do in the moment. Then to change your kind of overall daily view on life is by practicing gratitude. So, that could be a practice where sort of count 5 things that you're grateful for, or 5 things that actually went amazing instead of bad. Or if things did go bad, you can kind of look at 5 things that went well alongside that. And this can help us essentially change our perception of our day, because it will actually change the chemistry of your brain over time so that you can regulate from these negative things more quickly. So over time, you'll be able to bounce back from adversity easier. So that's how we build mental resilience as well.
Oh, I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I could feel the relax coming on with that breathing exercise. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how something so simple is so profound.
Yes, and so deeply ingrained within our physiology, right? It's right there at your fingertips. You don't need to do anything crazy. You don't need to get out a pen and journal. You don't need to sit in a corner and, hum or anything. And, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's pretty non-invasive in the sense that you can do it before you're about to go into a meeting. You can do it before you're about to go on stage, before you're about to go on a podcast. As soon as you find something stressful, as soon as you end your day, just help you kind of close that stress cycle that says, okay, that threat has now been removed. Because in previous times, we would have been confronted with a threat, and then the threat would have left, and then our bodies would have gone, okay, they're gone now, we can relax. But we live in a world where we have emails and financial worries and, all kinds of worries on our minds. And sometimes that threat is not perceived to have left. It stays in our minds and it becomes ruminative. So by you forcing that system to switch back on, which I mean the relaxation system, or if you will, the stress system to switch off, whichever way you want to look at it, you're telling the brain and body, you can be calm now.
So what happens to our brain during like a breakup and by breakup it can be like relationships or maybe even loss of a job?
So when we are dealing with endings, losses, whether it be, like you said, a job or particularly, a relationship, our brain is somewhat going through withdrawals. So let's look at it from a relationship perspective. Let's say you're going through a breakup. This person will have provided all these feel-good chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, vasopressin, it's a cocktail of emotions. And when they are removed from your life, you don't have that constant supply. And so you go through a bit of a withdrawal, particularly when it comes to dopamine. Now, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that puts us in pursuit of pleasure. So it's the molecule that says, hey, let's check up on this person. Let's see what they're doing with their lives. Let's go look at old photos so we can be nostalgic. Let's try and find solutions to this problem. And it can be not very well suited to dealing with the breakup. So staying in these cycles where you check up on people and you want to text them, etc., it keeps you stuck in a loop. And that's also why we tend to want to do that. Now, it means that you're delaying how quickly you get over a breakup. If you can, cold turkey is the best way. Of course, people have children, other things involved, and that's fine. Then what I would say is limit the conversation to logistics, just practicality. What do we need to do rather than reminiscing? Because the brain can kind of trick you into wanting to go down this memory lane. Now, another thing that happens is we have an area of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. And I'm only saying that for anyone that wants to geek out on brain areas. But that area is responsible for error detection. So what that means is it wants to make sure that it fixes problems in your life, which means that you'll tend to retrogradely go back on the memories, etc. Instead of being in a forward drive where you think, okay, well, what went wrong? What do I not want in my next relationship? We tend to dwell more on what went wrong. How could we have fixed that relationship? But that's not very useful because we can't fix it. Maybe you can, but usually we can't. And it's better use of our time to put that energy into figuring out what it is that we want for ourselves and what do we not want for ourselves in future relationships, rather than worrying about the past. And so it is with, losing a job or a dream. We don't talk about that enough. The thing you thought you were going to be. And that can be quite painful as well because you've built this entire trajectory on who you were supposed to become or where you were supposed to end up. And that can feel quite painful. So the same tools apply, instead of trying to fulfill that dopamine by texting your ex or checking up to see who got the job instead of you, if you got made redundant or whether, what your boss is doing, whatever, you're in a better position if you increase dopamine in healthier ways. That is through exercise, going to see friends, finding yourself busy with the hobbies, maybe learning something new, because that is the ultimate dopamine reward, the ultimate dopamine rush by attaining something that takes effort versus scrolling on social media and getting it in that way.
What great advice in doing that, being able to manage that. Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Nicole Vignola in regards to her new book, Rewire. Break the cycle, alter your thoughts, and create lasting change. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place, here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest Nicole Vignola, who's here sharing with us her new book, Rewire, Break the Cycle, Alter Your Thoughts, and Create Lasting Change. And so I know in your book you talk about how our brains 90% of the time operate subconsciously. So knowing that, how can we form like new habits?
So, yes, we have these subconscious kind of patterns that drive us. They are mental heuristics, meaning that our brain takes shortcuts to arrive to a particular conclusion. So, have you ever had it when you wake up on a Monday and you think, this is the week, this is the one? And then by Friday, you've kind of forgotten. That's very common. So, what I would say is, firstly, have grace. Your brain is trying to save energy for more cognitively demanding tasks. So, it's not going to remind you to try and change a pattern that's already ingrained. The brain doesn't necessarily, we have a moral compass, of course, but down to the neurobiology of how the neurons fire, they don't really know the difference between right and wrong. They just want to follow familiarity, what has been repeated. And I think when I explain that to people, it alleviates this kind of pressure that goes, okay, so it's not me, it's my brain. It's not you, it's your brain. And it means that we then put ourselves in a state of positivity again. Because again, if we are focusing on the negatives, like, you didn't do it this week. You said you were going to go to the gym and you didn't. Then you berate yourself. And how many times have you berated yourself? And how many times has it actually worked? Probably none, right?
That would be none that I know of.
Exactly. So, when we berate ourselves, we're putting ourselves in a state of shame and we keep ourselves stuck in that cycle. Whereas if we go slowly, step by step, okay, fine. I said I was going to go to the gym, but I didn't go to the gym. But what I did do instead was I did those 3 walks that I've been saying I was going to do. So fine, that isn't the gym, but at least I moved my body. Okay, now you think, that feels really good. That feels really nice. We want to feel nice. We want to feel good about ourselves. Let's do that again. Dopamine is going to then drive you to want to keep doing that because it wants to continue. Your brain wants to continue to feel good. And so again, by paying attention to the small wins, we put ourselves in a different state of mind, which then propels us, if you will, to want to keep going. Now, that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is that if you do, say, for example, I don't have an issue with eating cookies. So please, I'm just using it as an example because it's easy. in fact, I'll backtrack and I'll say, let's use smoking as an example. Let's say you're trying to quit smoking, but it comes 3 o'clock and you just can't hold out anymore and you end up smoking. What tends to happen is people berate themselves for that cigarette. And so then again, that shame kicks in. What is better use of your mental capacity, if you will, is to again focus on the positives. To say, okay, fine, well, look, I managed to hold out until 3 o'clock. I did it because XYZ. Figure out what was the trigger. And then what you can do is you can actually add on something positive to the end of that sequence. So let's say you smoked, but you've also been wanting to drink more water. What you could do is you could add the drinking of water at the end of that sequence. That eventually what happens is you're marrying the trigger and the response. The trigger being whatever it is. Let's say it's stress that triggers you to want to smoke. What will happen eventually is you will say, oh, actually, I'm very stressed and I want a cigarette, but I know that after cigarettes comes drinking water. You know what? I actually don't even want to smoke that cigarette. I'm just going to have a big cup of water because that's actually what I need right now. Or the physiological side is another great example there. So I find that that's very useful. And that's essentially helping you dismantle that firing pattern that says stress, which is your trigger, cue, which is grab the cigarette, and then response reward, attaining that cigarette.
I love that. I love how you break all that down. It puts it into little bite-sized pieces so people can overcome these type of things.
And that's just it. And this is why Rewire has been written the way that it has, because you can dip into every chapter as you need it. So you can dip into the stress one, you can dip into negativity bias, you can dip into all of them without having read the others. And they all give you tools that can help you with whatever it is that you're struggling with in that moment. Now, I'll backtrack a little bit. In 1995, Dr. Pasqualeone did a series of experiments where he took two groups. He asked one group of people who had never played the piano before to play a 5-finger piece on the piano. He then asked another group who, again, had never played the piano before to simply imagine that they were pressing those same keys. And what they saw was that they had similar levels of brain activity in the brain, in the motor cortex. So they saw how powerful our thoughts are. When we then look at athletes who perform visualization movements before executing the actual movement, so for example, rugby players, they did a study where they looked at rugby players kicking the ball over the posts. When they visualized, they had improved accuracy, they had improved speed, they had improved basically their kicks. And not only that, they actually saw that the connectivity in the brain areas was strengthening as well between the parts of the brain that communicate that says, let's initiate this movement. So that's a crazy one because we can see how powerful our thoughts are. So by visualizing what it is that we want to do. So let's say you want to become a runner. You want to start getting up in the morning and going to the gym or going for a run. What you can do the night before is visualize yourself waking up, not snoozing the alarm, putting on your clothes, putting on your socks, putting on your shoes, walking out the door, and then going for that run or the gym. And what will happen is your brain will have a blueprint for what it is that it is supposed to do. And so when you wake up, you'll be more likely to be able to do that. If that doesn't happen straight away, that's absolutely fine. Just keep going. Just keep practicing this visualization. Now, visualization works really well as well if you're sort of having to go into maybe a meeting where you know that you can sometimes be stressed or you're worried about your confidence. You can visualize yourself staying calm under pressure in front of your bosses, in front of everybody else, and executing your speech or whatever it is that you're going to deliver, your proposition with poise. And that will actually then translate into you being better equipped in that moment because the brain has now been there before. The brain experienced that as familiarity.
Oh, it's so fascinating. Is that a way that people can really be more kind of focused in the present moment to find their own level of happiness then too?
Yes. Yes. We can use that as a tool to visualize how we want the week to go, how the week went. We can also kind of backtrack and use it as a moment to just reflect. For anyone that is less kind of visual mentally, more visual physically, what I mean by that is maybe someone does better with color blocking or journaling or lists. That is also a form of visualization. It's the ability to foresee. It's essentially planning. It's like planning your week, planning your day, planning exactly how you want your brain to go.
So, what final piece of advice would you like to give our listeners, maybe if they're feeling stuck or limited by, their negative beliefs? What would your thoughts be for them?
I want people to know that they can change those thoughts. I don't want to say that they can change because I don't think that we necessarily need to change every aspect of ourselves, but I want people to have the hope. And that's why I wrote Rewire. I wanted people to see what it takes to change and that we have the tools, we have the knowledge, we have the mechanisms, and we absolutely can. So we don't have to be wired this way. We can teach, old dogs new tricks, and we can break free from these patterns. I think a lot of people suffer with these ruminative thoughts, these cyclical patterns, these negativity biases, and we can hold on to hope because we can change that. Absolutely.
Well, my goodness, you are just such an inspiration, Nicole. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
Thank you. So, of course, everything is in Rewire. Break the cycle, alter your thoughts, create lasting change. And then I'm on Instagram as Nicole's Neuroscience. My website is nicolesneuroscience.com.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much, Marianne. And yes, I'm hugely grateful for you having me.
Well, thank you, Nicole. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Rewire. Break the cycle, alter your thoughts, and create lasting change. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.